Jimripsu. My name is Prenz Ngoun. I was born and raised in Tukwila, Washington. I think, yeah, it definitely was different. For me, it's something that I think I didn't notice as much as a kid, as much as I do now. So looking back into my childhood, like in elementary school and middle school, looking back at that, I can see there was a lot of cultural differences. For instance, you know, at my household, we would have to take off our shoes before going into the house. But when I went to my friend's house, you wear shoes all over the house. It could be in the bedroom, in the kitchen, wherever. So yeah, there was a lot of differences. Yes, I guess so. My American friends, I feel like their parental advices were a little bit more lenient. Not to say my parents were super strict, but more strict than the average American household, I guess you can say. And so, like, I was still able to go out and hang out with friends, but then there were things that wasn't able to do because of my culture, and that was understandable, and that was taught to me at a very young age. And so, my parents were more strict with that. So yes, to answer that question briefly, yes, I found it difficult. Um, One of the reasons because although I was raised Khmer, my parents, well, my mom's side is actually mixed with Chinese. And so growing up much, much younger, I grew up as Chinese Khmer American. Um, and so when I was, I don't know, probably an infant and a toddler, my mom was speaking Chinese and Khmer to me. But then coming up, having to go into public schools, I would only be speaking English. And so that often made it hard to, I guess, connect or align with my culture. Um, and so my mom, or I guess my parents in general, would be having me attend Khmer classes, Khmer dance classes. I would be attending the monasteries with my mom. Anything that would still bring me exposure of the Khmer culture. And I think that's what my mom maybe subconsciously tried to do was, keep me within the Khmer culture. But yeah, it was a little bit difficult as, time passed. Some of those programs, Khmer programs, had, vanished. So um, Khmer clothes for one. Love the fashion. I love the Khmer fabric. I wear a krama with me every time I leave the house. So I definitely want to see that be passed on to future generations. I want the krama and the Khmer clothes, the Khmer attire, I want it to be normalized within this Western society. That's something that I believe many current and future generations can popularize. Um, Aside from that, food is really big. I think, some of the big things that represent a culture is, food, um, clothing, our attire, and also language. I think those are the big three things, or one more. The fourth thing is arts. So, with language, I really want to be able to see, just Khmer language on our shops or restaurants that we own. I think that's so important to be able to be in a different world or a different country other than Cambodia and still see Khmer font out there. I think that's really huge for me. That really makes me feel comfortable when I see Khmer font elsewhere besides Cambodia, or when I see another Khmer person wear, a grama, or not necessarily just a Khmer person, any person wearing a grama or a Khmer shirt or a Khmer skirt, or cooking Khmer food, or talking about the Khmer culture. So I think like in future generations, I want to be able to see that, folks are empowering their culture by, rocking the Khmer fashion, finding different ways to wear a Khmer, finding how they can really uplift their culture through food and arts. Musical instruments is huge, and the sounds are just so beautiful and peaceful, and it brings it brings a different vibe to the Khmer people when we see and encounter all of these aspects of our traditions. Those four things: food, the arts, the language, and our fashion. Yeah, for me, I have there's four of us, four children. I have two older sisters and one older brother. Um, and with being the youngest, I was always pulled around to go to the temple or the monastery. So a lot of my experiences that I can remember pretty vividly is being in the monastery with my mom, having to go every weekend to the monastery, having to go, listen to the monks chant, not knowing what's going on, just having to be in that environment with no clue, because I didn't speak the language at the time. I did understand bits and pieces, but every time I'd be there, we encounter one person, and my mom or my parents would be, immediately telling me to Jumrip Suota or Jumrip Suopu or something like that. And, to me, it's like, I don't even know this person, but, obviously I'm supposed to be respectful. And so, oh, Jumrip Suopu, Jumrip Suoye, and all of that. And so, like, for me, it was just a lot of going around to encounter people that I've never seen before or that I don't remember, and being like really uncomfortable at the monastery because like I didn't know how to interact with not just older people, but with just Khmer people in general that didn't speak English or that was limited in English. I felt comfortable, and looking back at it, they probably felt uncomfortable too. And so there was just this big barrier between myself and the Khmer culture that's represented in the monastery. And so, and with me, like I still see that nowadays. Like I feel more comfortable now, but I'm sure there's many folks out there that have grown up and still feel uncomfortable being in the monastery. Um, so I guess that's one of the experiences that I've encountered when I was younger. One of my favorite things about being Khmer is how rich our culture is. Um, there's so much, although there's so much suffering that is represented right now, and even in the past, there's so much pain and suffering that's represented within the Khmer culture and also the country of sort of Khmer. I think thinking outside of that, our culture is so rich. There's so many traditions that we have that's not being talked about, and that's one thing that I really love. These things, there's these aspects of the Khmer culture that you can't pull out of Khmer people. For instance, like having a Khmer painting at each person's house. Every Khmer person you go to is gonna have a picture of Ngoun. Like it's almost mandatory to have that, or a Khmer flag hanging around somewhere. So the real the real aspect of the Khmer culture is to see how empowering that our people make the culture to be. Um, I remember being years ago. I was out in Portland, just rolling around this gigantic park, and there was this festival going on, random festival, and I had my krama on, and I had just randomly passed by this family that seemed to be Southeast Asian. But as I got closer, I saw this older lady. She was wearing a krama. And to me, that felt really comfortable because I see another person wearing Khmer, and then now I can see that it was a Khmer person, and I can hear them talking Khmer, I can hear them speaking in Khmer, and I feel like that's, for me, that's what I love to always encounter, is to be able to hear, see, feel, and taste the culture. So yeah, one of my favorite parts is just being able to see the culture represented anywhere in the world. Um, I guess one thing that hasn't really been talked about today is that I actually lived in Cambodia for about 2.5 years. So previously, I was a Buddhist monk, and I had ordained in Cambodia in April 2012. And I spent about 2.5 years there. And what I can say is that my experience living in Cambodia has been life changing. It's been, honestly, it's been just amazing to have that experience. It's something that no person can experience unless they're there. And it's really a journey of each individual being able to take on. Um, I've learned so much about my culture while I was there. I learned how to speak, read, and write while I was in Cambodia for those 2 years. I made so many connections to the people and to the culture. Um, as I first arrived in Cambodia, I wasn't able to speak Khmer. And so it was very difficult for me to connect with the people there, and also just being able to adjust to the environment, such as food, um, and the people and the language. But over time, it became a little bit normal, and I will say it was one of the best experiences I've had in my life, and that wouldn't have happened if my parents didn't migrate to the U.S. And this all comes from my parents being Khmer, my grandparents being Khmer, my ancestors being Khmer. All of this leads back to them. So I'm very grateful for my parents to be able to give me this opportunity to experience something like that. And with that time in Cambodia, I was able to reconnect with my family's family that they haven't seen since the Khmer Rouge. And so, yeah, there's just many life experiences and life lessons that have come out of my parents to me, and I couldn't be more grateful to call myself Khmer. You know, my parents have always talked about the Khmer Rouge and their experiences and their struggles with that, and um, I take it as a life lesson. Even though we probably won't go through through the Khmer Rouge here in the U.S., but there's so many life lessons that we can take out of that to apply in our everyday society here. I cannot remember the year, but I do remember going to, they call it the South Park Temple. It's it's Wat Kamarat Potiram, that's located in South Park, which is located in pretty much South Seattle. And my family would pretty much go there for New Year's. And we did a lot of things there. I remember being there with family, eating the Khmer food there, playing traditional Khmer games. gambling in the temple, which was very odd to me, and it still is very odd to me that people would gamble in the temple, but that's something that happened during that time, in that time. Obviously, it doesn't happen anymore. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, just being in the temple, going around and putting alms for the monks, being in the back of the crowd, listening to the monks chant during their lunch session. Um, and yeah, just I remember, part of my New Year's being that we'd have shaving cream, and we go around just slapping each other with shaving cream and powder, and baby powder, and yeah, it was just a lot of celebrations within the Khmer New Year. I think the food, definitely the food. One of the very popular dishes, and it was very 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 delicious to me, was just psycho and the churro that comes with it. So the beef sticks and the pickled veggies that come with it. That's something that really stuck in my mind, was just the different foods that they had there. That was just one of my favorites. But they had a variety of Khmer food. They had their traditional coconut waffles with sesame seeds. That was something that really stuck to my mind. And um, yeah, that, and also just seeing within all that not craziness, but within all of that, with hundreds of people being there, with all this commotion going around, I was still able to see orange, and that was the monks that was there. Although there weren't many of them, but you'd be able to see them throughout the crowd, throughout everything that was going on, throughout all the celebrations. You could see just that spot of orange and know that that was a monk there. Um, to be honest, this is like, I didn't think of it then, and I feel like a lot of that is coming up as I'm talking right now. But I feel like within all the celebrations that I went to as a kid, at Khmer celebrations at the monasteries, I felt like every time I saw orange, it was meant for there to be a monk present at that time, present during the celebrations. So, and it feels even more important to know that those celebrations were taking place inside, a Buddhist monastery. So for me, it was just, okay, there's this orange, there's a spot of orange there, there's the monk there, you know, something has to be connected to this. As I guess a little later on, so probably when I was like, I'd say probably when I was like 15 or 16 years old, I can still at that time remember what my New Year's is like. I can remember that every year, right around April, there's supposed to be a celebration. There's supposed to be this New Year celebration that all Khmer people celebrate. And at 15, 16 years old, I wanted to I wanted to not only be part of that celebration, but I wanted to be someone who coordinated, something within that celebration, whether it was games, whether it was food, something that I could do. I wanted to be part of planning the Khmer New Year's. So yeah, that just having that thought in mind that every year that comes around, every April that comes around, I need to be able to be ready for Khmer New Year's. Um, just as a person, just be able to get my kurma ready, or just to get myself ready. I think Khmer New Year really is part of community. is really part of bringing people together, um, and is really being able to remind us everything that has happened in the previous year, but also remind us that we have this next year that's coming up to make improvements. So anything that we weren't satisfied with the previous year, we have this year to improve ourselves. But that doesn't go to say that we're going to forget everything that we did in the last year. New Year's is also about being able to pay gratitude to those that we've encountered in our previous year, such as our ancestors, or even our loved ones, our elders, those who steward our culture and our traditions. So yeah.